Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Opposed is nay. Thank you very much. Afternoon, Madam Clerk. We have ordinances, final read, just one. Is there anybody with a question on this item, 5A? I think we've covered it multiple times. Seeing none, let's move down to resolutions, please. 7A.
A resolution approving a special exceptions permit for an existing liquor store change in ownership located at 5987 Brainerd Road.
All right, B, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Economic and Community Development to enter into an agreement with Judge Walter Williams to serve as public officer and to conduct demolition hearings for a 12-month period with the option to extend the agreement an additional 3 terms of 12 months in length for a total period not to exceed 48 months.
All right. C, please.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a First Amendment and renewal of license agreement in substantially the form attached with River City Ducks LLC for the non-exclusive use of the Ross Landing ramp.
D.
A resolution to temporarily suspend the application and enforcement of International Energy Conservation Code 2012 edition as it applies to 1- and 2-family dwellings and townhouses, and to instead apply and enforce the 2009 edition of said code.
Thank you. Move down to E, please.
A resolution to amend resolution number 29833 adopted on March 12, 2019, adopting new rules of operation for the Chattanooga City Council.
Councilman Burrs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like the reading, I would like it read into the record that I believe we're going for the alternate version, which says.
Yes, ma'am. The alternate version has Article 5, council expense reimbursement or advance payment. Members of the council may request reimbursement for advance payment of travel, room, and board expenses for travel up to $6,000 per council member per year for their reasonable, necessary, and actual expenses incurred in the performance of their official duties in accordance with the City of Chattanooga's travel regulations, which are attached with this rule of operation. And members shall request approval of advance payment or reimbursement from the chair, who will approve or disapprove said request after expeditious review. In the event that the chairperson disapproves a member's request, the member may appeal the chair's decision to the council's Budget and Finance Committee, which may by majority vote recommend to the full council to uphold the chairperson's decision or approve the expense reimbursement requested.
Okay, I have one question. It gets back to Ms. Madison's question again.
Yes, ma'am.
I do not believe that if our resolution says that's it, that any member of the council can go over that.
No, ma'am, it says $6,000 per year.
Period.
Yes, ma'am.
So the appeal would be for something over the 6,000. In other words, I believe that the rest of that is kind of moot. If it's 6,000, it's 6,000.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm not sure that that can stay in there.
There could be a request or just a challenge as to whether something was an actual expense, and that would go to the Budget and Finance Committee at that point.
If it was an actual expense.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what needs to be in there. What it says now is that, for instance, if somebody asked the chair to approve something and because they were over their 6,000, no?
No, ma'am. It just says if there's some dispute about the advance payment or reimbursement issue on here, on a particular charge on here, they could appeal to the Budget and Finance Committee, I believe.
And does that mean overage or does that mean content?
It only says up to $6,000
Period.
per year.
So it would be content.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
All right, nothing further on that. F, please.
A resolution authorizing the Chief Information Officer and the City Finance Officer to enter into a letter of intent with Application Software Technology, LLC, for Oracle Cloud ERP implementation to include a termination for non-appropriation of funds during fiscal year 2019-2020, subject to terms and conditions, for a total cost for software annually in the amount of $575,000, for a total project cost of $4,796,584.
G, please.
A resolution authorizing the chief of the Chattanooga Police Department to execute a one-year contract with Forensic Logic for the purpose of maintaining the CopLink software platform, as well as complementary data integration services to be active from January 1, 2019 through December 31, 2019, for a total cost of maintenance and services not to exceed $39,307.
Seeing no further questions, if there is nothing else for the agenda portion of this, we will adjourn to Public Works and Transportation Committee. Chairman Mitchell?
Can I get approval of minutes? All those in favor say aye. Thank you. Let's start with Public Works. April 2nd, resolutions. Please read 7H.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to apply for and accept, if awarded, and execute all necessary documents under the U.S. Department of Agriculture Natural Resource Conservation Service Emergency Watershed Protection Program relative to storm damage from the February 6, 2019 storms at or near Arbor Creek Way, and authorizing the city's 25% share for an estimated amount of $300,000.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. Justin, you give us a little more information on this one?
Certainly. So there are two dates that FEMA's identified are critical dates that would be available for funding. These are called missions in the in FEMA's world that apply to the February 6th date and February 23rd heavy rainfall. This particular case is relative to the North Chickamauga Creek area along the Arbor Creek Way, where there's a watershed protection program available to mitigate issues and resolve private property matters where waters of the state impede during heavy rainfall. This actually, they've lost about half of their backyard, and maybe 3 to 4 properties are impacted. This is a 25% share on of the city's part, estimated to be about $300,000, and the Department of Agriculture would assist the property owners with this. We have not yet heard whether or not the president will call for declare the disaster in from the heavy rainfalls in the state yet, but they have. The TEMA has made their case to the federal government at this point. So this is our application. The reason that we had to get it on quickly and ask special permission to add this is because it was relative to a February 6th mission date. We had 60 days to complete our application.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, Councilman Gilbert.
Does this apply for all areas that was flooded on these dates, or just for one area?
So this is very specific to this Arbor Creek Way, where North Chickamauga Creek has impacted the private properties, and it's actually washed the back of their property away. So we have an interest, the city has an interest to stabilize North Chickamauga Creek, and the federal government is a party to help resolve that.
I'm going back to what I just said a few minutes ago. You got other areas in the city that South Chickamauga Creek had issues with. Does this apply for them areas also, or could they comply?
No, this doesn't. This is not related to what our other areas. So we have other impacted areas that we've been working with FEMA to help resolve on the right of way. These are not. This program is very specific to the Arbor Creek Way properties, but there is some additional action that, in fact, the fire department, transportation, public works, and a couple other agencies are working on to resolve some other problems related to that February 6th to 23rd timeframe, where heavy rainfall has washed away roads, impacted parks. So there's lots of other infrastructure that's damaged that we will make claims to if we are able to.
So in other words, what's the timeline for any other area dealing with South Creek? What's the timeline for them to actually apply for anything if it's damage to roads and things you just said a few minutes ago?
Well, we've already been working with FEMA. Matter of fact, Bill Payne and I, our city engineer, and with the Hamilton County Emergency Management Agency, members of transportation, have already gone out and done an initial observation. So FEMA's already been here to make assessments of the right-of-way damage. I saw in an article on March 23rd, I believe, that the state was still looking for reimbursement, or looking for the presidential declaration, which I don't know when they would expect that at this point.
Did you find any areas in South Creek, Chickamauga Creek areas, when FEMA was here?
We identified we've identified several areas. One in particular on the right-of-way was Wilcox Tunnel. I'm trying to remember all the locations. So the Lake Resort Drive, Elder Mountain Road, all of those locations were things that were major impacts. There's been other parks that were impacted that we may not have visited with TEMA and FEMA, but we have indicated that we would make a claim with the federal government to receive assistance if that's available.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir. We can update the council on that at the most appropriate time, maybe after we find out what help we're going to receive. We'll come back and update the council then.
You okay?
Yeah, I can ask later on some more questions.
All right, please read 7I.
A resolution authorizing the city attorney to develop an interlocal agreement with Hamilton County so that the city and county can conduct a benefit analysis study concerning consolidation services between Moccasin Bend Wastewater Treatment Plant and WWTA.
Councilperson Burrs.
Thank you, Chair. We discussed this briefly, and Councilman Henderson wanted to explain his reasoning for this. And so before you start, Chip, this was my concern. WWTA is independent of the county. They're like an authority. They're funded by their ratepayers. They go to the county if they need to build a plant or for the big funds. So after hearing the plan today that apparently included everybody, I was concerned as to what the purpose of this was.
Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as you well remember, I brought this resolution before the council week before last, and just to let those of you that might not know, the county commission approved a mirror image of this resolution at their last county commission meeting, 7-2. So I think this gives us an opportunity to crawl out of our silo and work together in a consolidated effort for a community problem. I think what this particular resolution does is it asks for a benefit analysis study about consolidating the two entities. It's not as much about the agreement that has been formed, although in a consolidated effort, Justin has said, Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard you say before that we have no leverage to make them sign their the IJAs that we have to sign. Is that a fair statement?
The city doesn't,
Yeah.
EPA does.
Right. So basically what a consolidated effort would do is eliminate the need actually for an IJA. We would all be one entity, if you will. And in my mind, it also ensures that we maintain the flow that we set up and spent money for the infrastructure to receive. We ensure that we continue to get that flow. And in our Public Works Committee week before last, I guess it was, I made the analogy of Walmart can sell cheaper because they buy in volume. And basically that would be the same theory here. Obviously, the more flow we get, the more volume, it helps keep our costs down to our ratepayers. So I think, one, this is just a study. It's just looking at what benefits would be gained, what efficiencies could be gained, what economies of scale could be gained through merging these two entities. And that's all this resolution does at this time, is just ask for these two entities to come together, let the two attorneys draw up the agreement for what this study would look like.
Push your button.
It's, okay. So which are the two entities? You're talking about the city and the county. However, it's the WWTA who is independent of the county. That's what I'm trying to, I hear what you're saying. You'd like to merge and have a consolidated water system.
I didn't say that, okay? That's already been insinuated. I'm calling for a study to see if a merger would make sense.
And I get that. Is it between us and Hamilton County, or us and the WWTA? Who is the other entity? That's what I'm trying.
So the resolution authorizes the city attorney to work with the county attorney and draw up the agreement for the study. However that needs to look, whether it's with the WWTA or whether it's with the county, all we're looking at is a study. I guess technically we could do it ourselves. We could do a study to determine the benefits, the efficiencies that are gained, but I think it's something that we need to partner with the county on so that it's a joint venture. Like I said, that I think would be left up to the attorneys to decide best how to draw up the agreement to see how the study is done, and then they bring that study back to us.
So, do you have the right, sorry, this mic.
Well, we're happy.
Try now.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Do you have the right people at the table?
We have the two attorneys at the table.
So would it not be the or does the county attorney, is that also the attorney for the WWTA?
Mr. Noblett said he believes that is correct.
I believe so.
So they are one and not independent?
No, they are a separate authority, but the same attorney's office represents, I believe, the county and the WWTA.
Thank you.
Thank you. Will you yield to Councilman Gilbert so I don't have to keep going? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilman Gilbert.
Just briefly, Phil, I remember hearing this before in the past. I think in Littlefield's term, did we do something, study anything during that time?
It was slightly different during that administration, if I remember correctly. There is a separate statute. The WWTA, if I remember correctly, was created by a separate statute only for counties at that point in time. It was actually, I'm not sure if it was a private act when it first came in, and therefore the creation back in the 70s under Dalton Roberts. That authority was created for Hamilton County. Is a larger regional water and wastewater treatment authority statute, I believe, that Mayor Littlefield was looking at that point in time, and actually established a corporation, but was never carried through. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
You okay? Councilman Ledford, thank you for your patience.
No, thank you, Chairman. Appreciate that. A couple quick questions. So to recap this, this is just an information gathering procedure. Would we go through create a committee, do you think, or would we hire a consultant? If we hired a consultant, who might that be? This might be for Phil. And do we have any idea of the cost? Would we split the cost? I'm just trying to figure out some, you know me, with the logistics part of anything.
The city attorney would not be incurring any cost without coming before you to make that determination. Right now, it's just talking about trying to develop an agreement with Hamilton County here, and so
Okay.
it'd be discussions with the county attorney.
Okay, so this isn't set in stone. It's just moving forward, the next step.
Yes, sir.
The next part I wanted to make sure of, we spend a lot of money on studies. That's one of our things. And so out of this study, is there anticipated policy recommendations or an end goal that we would act upon, or do we foresee? This might be for Councilman Henderson.
You want to take it? Sure. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So I want to be real clear. What my intent of this study would be is why we should consolidate, not necessarily at this point in time how we should consolidate. So what I'm particularly interested in is efficiencies gained. Is there economies of scale to be realized through I'm going to call it a joint merger at this point in time, for lack of a better word. Anytime that we can deliver services more efficiently, I'm not sure why we wouldn't take a look at that. So that's my intent at this point in time. Is to take a look to see if we can deliver services in a more efficient manner.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any more questions? All right, we'll move on then. We'll move on to ordinances on first reading for April 9th. Please read 7B.
An ordinance amending Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 4, Article 2, Rules, Regulations, Criteria, Standards, Section 441, Rules adopted in Chapter 20, Article 2, Health Nuances, by adding Section 2029 through 2032 relating to noxious odors and nuances.
Don't see any questions? And we'll move on to resolutions for next week. Please read 8E.
A resolution authorizing the award of contract number Y18002201 to JDH Company, Inc. of Chattanooga, Tennessee, replacement roofing system for Heritage House Community Center in the amount of $167,216.20 with a contingency amount of $20,000 for an amount not to exceed $187,216.20.
Seems like an expensive roof for a house.
No question, move on.
Okay, we'll move on then. I don't see any questions. 8F, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to execute a paving for pizza agreement and to accept a monetary donation sponsored by Domino's Pizza to fill potholes within the city, subject to certain conditions, for a total amount not to exceed $5,000.
I don't see any questions. Would you please read 8G?
A resolution to authorize year 3 of a 4-year term for the on-call blanket contracts for geo-environmental consulting and construction material testing services, contract number E16007301, with the following firms: Geo Services LLC, KS Ware and Associates LLC, SNME Inc., Stantec Consulting Services Inc., Terracon Consultants Inc., and Thompson Engineering Inc., based on the 3 services categories of geotechnical construction material testing, and environmental services that each consultant qualified for, the renewal of the 6 one-year blanket contracts for professional services estimated at $400,000 total annually for all 6 professional firms for use by all departments.
Can't get a question out of all that? Okay, then. 8H, please.
A resolution authorizing 5 employees of the Department of Public Works to accept gratuity in the amount of $4,000 each for travel and training expenses during a trip to review innovative solid technologies for biosolid treatment for a total amount of $20,000.
I'm just dying to learn what they're going to be learning out there.
Yeah, so this is they're going to investigate from Canby and Veolia, are 2 competing entities that have developed a thermal hydrosis process, which is part of the treatment of Class A biosolids and development of Class A biosolids, which would eventually save a tremendous amount of money from hauling Class B biosolids, which currently have to be handled and land applied and tested by the city of Chattanooga. We spend about $2 million a year hauling biosolids and land applying those for agricultural purposes. This is to investigate new technologies that these 2 companies have developed and installed.
Are you saying potentially turn the Class B into Class A?
That's correct. So the project total is somewhere around $70 million in a plant improvement to create a Class A biosolid. And this is one of the more innovative and cost-effective methods to develop a Class A biosolid.
All right, I see no questions. I guess that's it for the next 2 weeks. Thank you, Mr. Holland.
Thank you, council people.
We'll move on to transportation. Resolutions, April 2nd, tonight. Please read 7J.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Transportation to apply for and, if awarded, accept a grant from the Riverview Foundation for expansion of the Bike Chattanooga electric bicycle fleet in the amount of $80,000.
Where are those bikes going?
We don't, we haven't decided yet, Mr. Councilman, but
I got an idea for you.
I'm sure you do.
Okay, thank you. We'll talk. You probably need 8 other meetings too. All right, we'll move on to ordinances on first reading for April 9th. Please read 7C.
An ordinance closing and abandoning an unopened unit block of West 50th Street as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
Okay. Don't have our council person from District 7 here today, so hopefully it'll be okay by next week. Please read 7D.
An ordinance closing and abandoning the 2500 block of Tom Street and a portion of the 1500 block of East 26th Street as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
You okay, Councilman? Sure.
Yes, sir. This was a, this is a L-shaped right-of-way that dead ends due to the interstate as well as the existing, there's a small creek there as well. So it's not feasible for it to have any future use. For that reason, we recommended approval, as did the Planning Commission. Thank you.
All right. Please read 7E.
An ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 24, Article 14, Section 24504, relating to one-way streets.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. Blythe, can we get a Cliff Notes on that?
Certainly. So this is going back a number of years. We did some studies before my time here on some two-way conversions. We did some major high-profile two-way conversions many years ago through the Chattanooga Forward process, which was a Mayor Burke initiative in 2014, as well as the Center City Plan city center plan that was done by River City. Recommendations came from those plans to convert or consider converting the remainder of the major one-way streets in our downtown to two-way. So this council approved a budget, I believe, a couple of years ago. I want to say it was the fiscal year 17 budget for a study that we engaged Barge Designs on to complete. They recommended to implement Lindsay and Houston, and in particular, they indicated that the first phase that we should implement was from 11th Street to Macaulay Avenue. We agreed with that. It's the easiest conversion that we have. It has very few implications associated with it in terms of parking. Yes, you pointed it right out there to 11th Street here and up to Macaulay Avenue.
Gotcha.
We've done significant engagement, primarily with property owners and stakeholders north of Macaulay Avenue, just to think through how a future conversion would happen. But that engagement led with, we're going to go ahead and implement this. We're doing this with our own staff and crews, so we're saving some significant dollars and self-performing this conversion. And as you know, I believe there was some press coverage about it because part of the process is to notify the general public with signs that we have already put out, assuming that the council would agree to make this change in the city code.
Very good. So you're consolidating and saving money.
That's right.
Okay, curious. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
You okay? What are you going to do after those two streets?
We're looking at, we've got a couple of details that we're trying to figure out for the northern section, but we've made no commitment on that yet. We wouldn't have the staffing to do that this year, even if we did want to go forward with the future conversion. And that would be future as in to expand the two-way all the way up to eventually Riverside Drive. I've got no plans to look at the other sections, which were much more complicated. The other one-way streets that were considered in the study were 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. But we're not going to look at those right now. We're just going to focus on Lindsay and Houston.
All right, are there any streets that you have that you studied that you concluded that we don't want to convert them to two-way? And the reason I ask, I have constituents saying do them all.
I'd be happy to go through the report that Barge produced. I wouldn't say, they didn't come out and say don't convert them, but some of them were very challenging due to spatial constraints, available parking that's already there now, questionable benefit from the standpoint of throughput. Lindsay and Houston are many blocks long and connect Market Street to Riverside Drive, so they have a bigger role to play in the grid of the downtown. So, yeah, there wasn't a recommendation not to do it, but there also was a pretty strong recommendation to take more time to study how those would happen.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I don't see any more questions on those, and I turn the page, and it looks like that's it. Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
I just wanted to clarify, because I did mention 8th Street. We've also included one block of 8th Street in this conversion that some of you may remember we temporarily converted to two-way when we did some construction down around Chestnut and 8th Street, and we've never permanently changed it to two-way. Everybody has been positive about that change. That's the one block between Broad and Chestnut that's now a two-way street. So we're also proposing that be included in the city code with these changes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank
you
you
very much. With that, I believe it's time for Planning and Zoning Committee. So I will turn it over to Councilman Ledford. Or should I say Chairman Ledford?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Planning and Zoning. Are we awake? Ready to go? All right, thank you very much. We're going to, where's she at? She's not even here for me to pick on. It's one of the best committees we have going, that's for sure. Councilman Coonrod. Mr. Bridger, good afternoon, sir. Mr. Anderson, good afternoon. You look comfortable sitting down there in a nice flannel shirt. It's softer down there. I don't know. These are new chairs. So, very good. We have an item, first reading in planning that was tabled and is being brought back, and it is on tonight's agenda. And I want to thank Dr. Burrs for giving me the only two cases I have today out of District 6. If it weren't for you, Dr. Burrs, we'd this would be a boring meeting. So thank you very much. All right, John, you want to run down 6A for us just real quick?
Sure, yeah, it's, before this is a request us on Vance Road to rezone a piece of property from R1 residential to M1 manufacturing for expansion of an industrial facility. Staff recommended approval, seeing as an extension zone, but not the entire site, a portion of the site. There are some property that's zoned. Unfortunately, I do not have the visuals up here. I will have them for tonight. But staff recommended for approval of a portion of the property, not the entire property, to provide transition between that industrial use and some of the residences that are to the north. At Planning Commission, they concurred with staff's recommendation to approve rezoning a portion of the site. I think when it came to City Council, I know some concerns about making sure that we control what could happen in that M1. So I think there's an alternative recommendation that I'm sure Councilwoman Burrs would speak to in terms of maybe a different zoning option to consider for that site.
Yeah? Okay. And I'm not going to ask for a complete presentation tonight. There is no opposition that I know of. These people have worked hard to try and work things out so that we could do other development on Airport Road, on Vance Road because of the airport plan. So I'm going to request tonight that it be, I have to do it tonight, right, Phil?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. The M1 will be changed to M2.
Yep.
And so what I'm going to ask is that it stay with the front part remaining R1, the back part that was approved for, front part be R1, the back part that was originally M1 to go to M2. The noise regulations that we had talked about are already in the law, so it's not necessary to do any more than that. And I asked Chris if that's, I asked him to be here. That's what you wanted, right? So we're going to make it real simple tonight, and you don't have to bring a full presentation unless council wants it.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Burrs. John, we have next week, we have ordinances on first reading.
Yes.
Another District 6. Thank you, Dr. Burrs.
Yes.
7A, please.
Yes, this is a request to rezone a piece of property located at 7315 Tyner Road and 704045 Lee Highway from R1 residential zone to C2 convenience commercial zone for a restaurant. As you can see here on the screen, highlighted in yellow, it's right at the intersection of Tyner Road and Lee Highway. If you look at the current site itself, it's vacant. It's bordered by single-family residential to the north. To the south, you have industrial and commercial uses. To the east, across the street, you have commercial uses. And abutting it immediately to the west, you do have some single-family residences to the west. You may recall that we had an R3 request just to the north of this property that was denied by council for some background in terms of zoning history. Here you see some images, again, looking at the intersection. Upper left is the site itself. Upper right is looking down. I believe it's, what's the name of the road? Is it Hickory? Silverdale Avenue looking south. Yeah, you can see, I can see the title's font. Sorry about that. And then again, the lower portions of the slide, you see the commercial intersection that it's a part of. Looking at the zoning pattern of this area, as you can see, the intersection on all three corners is zoned commercial with the exception of this piece. And looking at this request, staff really took strong consideration in terms of what road the property fronts onto. The big difference between this property and the property to the north that was denied is that this property we would encourage accessing directly on Tyner Road, whereas the other property would have access on the Silverdale Road, which is a residential street. So that's the key distinction here, why staff recommended approval. Even though the plan that was adopted recommended single family, looking at the current zoning pattern for this area, you've got three corners already zoned commercial. It did not seem feasible for this property to stay residential based on that location. We did have concerns about the abutting residences to the west, and that's why when staff looked at it, I mentioned that we recommended some conditions, and those conditions were vehicle access to the subject property from Tyner Road only. So again, try to control access to that other road. A side obscuring fence in addition to a type B landscaping buffer shall be required along the west and northern property lines abutting those residential uses. Hours of operation limited between 7 and 10 p.m. Dumpsters on the property with trash pickup between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only, and no gas stations or vehicular repair or wash facilities. This went on to Planning Commission. There was opposition. There were some residents who lived in those homes just to the west of this property, had some concerns about hours and just kind of the kind of activity that, you know, that would occur there. After hearing those comments from the residents and the applicant and staff report, Planning Commission endorsed staff's recommendation with one exception. That last condition you see is a little more restrictive in terms of use. It says restaurant and office use only. So it's a little bit tighter in terms of the types of uses you can have on the property. So it comes to you with a recommendation from staff and Planning Commission to approve with conditions.
Dr. Burgess,
Yeah.
hit your light one more time. One more time.
Now? All right. Noise. I know we have our noise ordinances. I think this is going to be a pizza restaurant. When you have outside tables, this sort of thing, or is there any, does the ordinance include outside speakers, music, that kind of thing? I don't know that he's planning this,
Right.
but I can understand the neighbors wanting protection.
We've done conditions in the past, and I'll ask, okay, Dallas is not here, but Randy's here, cool. Now, I'm gonna give a thought and you add. I know we've done some conditions in the past that say no outdoor loudspeakers, to clearly say, so you don't have that drive-up ordering where there's kind of the squawk box. I do believe there's a noise ordinance, but I'm not sure to what degree it would. Usually that's for pretty loud decibels, as you know. I got a live, you have a live rock band, and it's you know, it's over a certain. So in terms of policing noise,
I think maybe I'm talking about the one that we did on outside speakers.
okay, I can find some language and have it ready.
The city code currently at 2569 says unless you've got a downtown amplified type of permit that will occur in the downtown area only, you have to operate with less than 55 decibels between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. and 50 between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. So it limits the amount, and we do have the ability to be able to measure the amount of decibels in the police department.
Okay, then that's okay. I still would like to limit no outside speakers.
Okay.
We've done
I
that
can
a
send you
couple of
some, so-
places. So we totally obviate the need for decibels
Right.
if you say no outside speakers, and I think we've done that with a
Yes.
couple of places.
We have.
Okay, so if we would add that, please.
Happy to.
Thank you.
Very good.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Brian Schultz now, who's going to give you an update on some zoning text amendments that we're considering that will be coming to Planning Commission and you all for action in June, as well as an update on the steep slope and floodplain study. So, Brian?
Let's go forward.
All right.
Since you just had one zoning case, I thought I'd spend to about 5:50 to talk about this stuff, if it's okay with you guys.
Oh, great. I'm good.
Nowhere else to
Brian.
go?
Yeah,
This is
I'm
riveting
good.
stuff, so.
I'm here all night.
Okay. No, I'll make it short and sweet. We do have some text amendments that will be coming to you in June. It's really housekeeping issues. But the overview is three major categories. In a manufacturing zone, each manufacturing zone has landscape requirements, buffering between residential zones. These are less restrictive than the landscape regulations. I'll get in there in just a second. The M1 manufacturing zone also has, requires a 30-foot landscape buffer for outdoor storage. It's our understanding this requirement is very difficult to comply with when there's a change of use in existing properties, when they're allowing outdoor storage. That's very difficult to comply with. And as part of this request, we're also going to add some definitions. So the first proposal is delete these requirements in the manufacturing zone, which talks about landscape buffer and reference the landscape regulations. See on the left-hand side of the screen, that's the existing language that's in each of the manufacturing zones. It requires a 15-foot landscape buffer, but if you reference the landscape regulations, that buffer is 30 feet. So it conflicts. It also talks about difference in types of materials, the landscape materials that you have to install on the property. Those conflict. So again, this proposal will be to delete it out of the manufacturing zones and simply reference the landscape regulations so there won't be a conflict. The second proposal is to delete the required 30-foot landscape buffer and replace with the following. Basically for outdoor storage in any of the manufacturing zones, for new development or change of use in any manufacturing zone, the following, the outdoor storage shall be screened by the following methods. A solid opaque fence or wall, a minimum of 7 foot in height. Any chain link fence in any form is prohibited. Also, for any property with outdoor storage, there shall be an 8-foot minimum width unpaved planting area in front of the fence across the front of the property where it butts the right-of-way. And then third, vehicle sales, because manufacturing zones allow commercial or new and used car lots, we want to make sure that vehicle sales areas don't have to be landscaped or provide screening. So number 3, vehicle sales as defined in these regulations are exempt from the screening requirements described above. Because of these changes, housekeeping, we also realized we need to add some definitions to the zoning code. One of those is outdoor storage. We're basically defining outdoor storage as the keeping in an unenclosed area of any goods, junk, material, merchandise, RVs, motor vehicles, junk vehicles, passenger vehicles, and commercial vehicles. Commercial vehicles are defined as earth-moving equipment and vehicles, dump trucks, etc. That's kept in the same place for 24 hours. That's a big definition, so there's a lot of things described in that. So we also had to break down and describe other uses. Vehicle, motor vehicle. A self-propelled device licensed as a motor vehicle and used for transportation of people and goods over the roads. Also, passenger vehicle. A motor vehicle with no more than 2 axles and or 4 wheels and designed primarily for the transport of persons. We also described junk vehicle, any rusted, wrecked, damaged, or dismantled or partially dismantled vehicle in such a condition that's economically infeasible to restore the vehicle. We also have a vehicle sales area. That's basically where new and used car lots hold the cars are for sale on that lot. We also define automobile sales, new and used. So this also helps codes enforcement, who enforces these regulations. So the more definitions we have, it makes their job easier. We have Randy and Karna here today if you have any questions related to some of the landscaping requirements. Again, I think this makes their life easier, and it cleans up these old conflicts that we've had over the years in the manufacturing zones.
Very good. Brian, I see no lights, but I do have a question for you. First of all, thanks for looking at this, because sitting in the BOZA meetings, I've noticed some conflicts between buffer language with
Yes.
M1 to M1 properties. It seems a bit unrealistic and unreasonable. Would you go back to, there it is. Let's talk about the, line item number 1, if we can, for a second. A solid, opaque, freestanding fence or wall. The only thing that says to me is a wooden fence.
Vinyl, Randy's saying vinyl as
Vinyl?
well. Vinyl as well.
Okay, okay. Why did we eliminate, because when you build a wooden fence, the first day it's up is the best day it's ever going to look.
Right.
Just FYI. Chain link in any form with the slat or mesh, why is that not acceptable? Can you explain
I'll
on that a
defer
little
to
bit?
Karna. We do have, there's an example of one over on the Tunnel Boulevard that has a chain link fence. They put the slats in, but those slats don't go all the way to the ground. There's a big gap at the very bottom. Some people's opinions that doesn't look good, but Karna can explain more of why we're restricting those.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
We've had some previously very vague language in the ordinance to a site obscuring, and my understanding of what obscures your view is a little different than other people's, but if you are driving along something that's, let's just say 50% opaque, you're going to see it all. You might not see it head on, but you're going to see it when you move. And I've got a lot of experience enforcing dumpster screening, and the slats and the openings required and any kind of mesh allow you to see all the equipment, in my opinion. There's also the ability of a lot of the slatted fences, the wind will tear them up over time. And so when it's outdoor storage and it's desired that it not be seen, the solid fence is the one that's a more defined standard where it's opaque, you cannot see through it, period, and we're not making a lot of value judgments.
Okay, that answers my question. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Still think there's some good-looking chain link fence slats out there, but that's my opinion. I do have a light, though, for you, Brian. Councilman Gilbert?
This is just for M1.
All the manufacturing zones.
What about, I know we did C2 not too long ago, but I know a lot of C2 have a lot of junk in areas that needs to be kind of straightened out too, for us, you can still see it.
That'll be our next round of cleanup. We're slowly getting these one at a time. C2, you do have the contractor's yard. I think that's what you're talking about. That zone does require screening of outdoor storage in a contractor's yard. If I'm not mistaken, outdoor storage in the C2 zone itself is limited to 20%. I think it also has screening requirements in that zone as well. They don't conflict with the landscape regulations.
So you are going to be looking at that?
We're looking at that as part of our overall zoning code assessment.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Councilman Gilbert. Brian, I'm seeing no other lights. Anything else you want to talk about?
Steep slopes and floodplains.
I knew you were.
You knew, you know.
I knew you were going to go there.
Okay, I'll give you a quick update on this, just where we've been and where we're going. Because Council knows, in 2018, December 2018, you all adopted a resolution to authorize the RPA to start looking at steep slopes and floodplains. So as a part of that, we created an advisory group of 12 people, 12 members, of residents, developers, and real estate professionals, engineers. We held an introductory meeting at the end of January to meet everybody and get together and discuss where we're going. From January through March, RPA has also conducted an assessment of our existing regulations on the book in terms of land disturbing permits, timber removal, floodplain regulations, what we have on the books today. Through September, we've started this a long time ago in September through now, basically March, we've looked at different peer cities across the country on their standards and see what they do in terms of development on steep slopes and floodplains. Also, we created a technical review committee, which is made up of city staff, a professor from UTC in engineering, and an environmental consultant. And that serves as a sounding board for us to throw ideas off of this advisory committee or technical review committee of, are we looking at the right things when we're assessing our steep slopes and floodplains? So it's just another body to get information from. We meet ongoing. Right now, our research department, RPA, is also doing an environmental assessment. You know, where are our steep slopes? Where's our floodplains? How many properties are affected by steep slopes or floodplains? So that's ongoing. Hopefully have that wrapped up, I think, next week, a first draft of that. Also, about 2 weeks ago, we took our advisory committee, those 12 people, to visit sites in Chattanooga. That way we can be on the same page. You know, when I hear 25% slopes or 10%, I'm not sure I know what that visually looks like. I have to see it. So we took the folks to different sites in Chattanooga to just show them, to see what we're facing, to get their feedback. Most of the comments we heard back were, loss of tree protection, mass grading. Some of these sites are cleared very early with no clear development plan in near future of constructing a home. Why is the entire site cleared? Those are some of the comments we heard. Our next advisory committee meeting is April 12th. We'll go over the existing regulations with that committee. We'll also recap the sites we visited and sort of identify missing gaps in our regulations. Where are things that we don't have in our toolbox to regulate steep slopes or floodplains? And also talk about public hearings, which we're going to try to do in May. These public hearings, again, are going to be early to mid-May. The format of these meetings are going to be an open house type format meeting where people can come and throughout the day and visit with staff, be one-on-one meetings with boards displayed around the room. That way we can talk to people one-on-one just to get their feedback. These will be held, we're thinking right now, at the Youth and Family Development buildings in each of the council districts. We want to, instead of having one giant public meeting, we want to do each of the council districts, because what's happening in Council District 4 is going to be different in Council 1 or 2, and vice versa. So we want to make sure that we're capturing all the comments from each of the council districts on just what the concerns are. So again, the purpose of these meetings are really, like, again, open house, just to get feedback where people come and go, and feel free to provide comments. We want to know from them, you know, what is your concerns with steep slopes and floodplains? Do we have a concern at all? And if so, what is it? Talk about the existing regulations. Are they adequate? Are they not adequate? Or do we need new regulations? And if so, how restrictive shall those regulations be? If existing regulations are okay, or not working, what is it? Is it lack of staff, just not being enforced? We just want to know, because we've got to find out what the true issues and concerns are. So moving forward, our next steps, we want to finalize these public meeting materials. It's a lot of information we're going to be throwing at the public. We also need to contact the Youth and Family Development buildings to see when those buildings can be reserved, or if not, some larger facility may be acceptable. We also want to schedule one-on-one meetings with council members to discuss in May what's the best times for you guys when you can be in attendance, and just show you the materials that we have and we'll be presenting to the public. We also need to advertise these public meetings, and then we're also going to have a follow-up meeting all day at the DRC. In case you can't attend these 9 different council meetings, you can attend a make-up meeting at the DRC. I believe that's it. That's where we are in terms of steep slopes. We're still shooting probably for late fall before we have a document to council to look at. So with that, any questions, I'll try to answer on where we are and where we're going.
Sure, Brian, I'm seeing no lights, but let me take just a second to say, as I do since we started this process, and that is to publicly thank the 12 people that are working on this committee, because these are citizens from all different backgrounds, and the time that they're dedicating to this, I think, is commendable, and I appreciate them very much. I know we all do, because this is a very serious topic in our city when it comes to development, because we are out of land. Right. And we need to be really careful. And I want to say also that as I do after each meeting, and that is, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the difference in engineers. I'm seeing it in developers. I'm hearing the conversation being had. And I think that just by us doing this work and taking a bold step forward and with this work, that we're seeing a change. And I want to encourage things like the review of our PUD to create tools to increase density where we need to make projects work and stay out of floodplains as much as possible. This amount of rain that we've had recently should teach us all a lesson, engineers, developers, everybody in the city, how important it is that we treat this very seriously and that we do the right thing, whether it's improving standards or creating standards that encourage better development and just looking at things differently. So I think that I hope that we're doing good work, and I appreciate the people that are working on this committee for us.
I'll let them know. I will tell you that advisory committee has been really excellent. They're all very passionate about this topic and dedicating, once a month on a Friday afternoon to listen to us talk about steep slopes.
Friday afternoons are precious, and I appreciate that.
And they've been really good and very helpful for us.
Yeah, they have, and I've talked to a lot of the members who come and visit here, and I tell you, they are passionate, and I just thank you all for that work.
Okay, you're welcome.
Anything else we're going to talk about? Updates on Area 3?
I believe that's scheduled for April 16th, Area 3.
Okay, April 16th, we're going to discuss 12, John, and then we're going to move that to the April 23rd agenda. Is that correct? That's correct. Very good.
Just real quick to give you an update on the area plans and kind of looking ahead to the next set that we're going to be working on to give you some of our thoughts on that. So I know some of you are eagerly awaiting what staff thinks about that. So stay tuned, April 16th.
Very good. John, you have anything else you want to share with us? No? You're good? Council, any questions, concerns, comments? Very good. If not, we'll adjourn us till 6.